The midwife's hands were slicked with blood. The cries of a child filled the chamber, not the cries of a newborn, but of a 13-year-old girl whose body was breaking beneath the weight of something it was never meant to endure. This was not a mother. This was a child. Her name was Margaret. Her story is often painted with the colors of triumph and destiny. Historians celebrate her as the mother of the Tudor dynasty, the woman who secured a throne. But tonight, as you lie here in the quiet and the stillness, I will tell you the story behind the story. The forgotten truth. A tale of innocence stolen, of pain endured, of survival against impossible odds. It begins not with power, but with blood, and the scream of a girl who should have been playing with dolls, not giving birth to kings. On May 31, 1443, in the quiet halls of Bletsoe Castle in Bedfordshire, a baby girl was born. Her name was Margaret Beaufort. To her mother, she was soft and small, a miracle of flesh and breath. To her father, John Beaufort, Duke of Somerset, she was a jewel in the family crown. But fate was cruel. Within a year, John was dead, and whispers of suicide crept through the stone corridors. In medieval England, suicide was more than a tragedy. It was a stain. A disgrace that clung to the family name. And so, from her very first year, little Margaret carried not just a blanket in her cradle, but the weight of shame and vulnerability. For she was not just a child. She was an heiress. An infant wrapped not only in linen, but in wealth and land, in titles that greedy eyes would never forget. From the moment Margaret could barely toddle across the floor, she was not seen as a child. She was a prize, a vessel of fortune. The vultures circled. Powerful men calculated how her inheritance might fatten their coffers. Her mother, Margaret Beauchamp, tried to shield her daughter with love, with education, with books in French and the sound of poetry in her ears. But love can only shield so much in a world where kings write destinies. And soon, the crown would take notice of the little girl with the great fortune. When Margaret was only 3 years old, King Henry VI made his decision. The heiress was too valuable to leave unclaimed. He placed her in the hands of William de la Pole, Duke of Suffolk. And there, in a ceremony both surreal and cruel, a toddler was married to a boy of 7. Picture it, the small hand of a child clutching another, neither understanding the vows, both too young to even spell the words they spoke. Yet for the adults in the room, it was a triumph. Property secured. Wealth chained. The Church approved. Rome even gave papal dispensation, smoothing away the moral doubts with ink on parchment. It was all perfectly legal. Perfectly blessed. And yet, it was wrong. Even the flickering candles must have seemed to tremble uneasily as the little girl stood before the altar. But fortune shifts like the wind. In 1453, Suffolk fell. Arrested, disgraced, murdered. His plans crumbled, and Margaret, still a child, was once more a jewel without a crown. Back on the market, back in the king's hands. Once again, her life would be shaped not by her laughter, not by her dreams, but by men who measured her worth in acres, castles, and coin. And soon, her path would cross with a man whose choice would nearly destroy her. His name was Edmund Tudor. Half-brother to the king. Ambitious. Ruthless. Twice her age. On November 1, 1455, 12-year-old Margaret became his bride. She was tiny, slight, not yet grown into womanhood. He was a man of 24, with a calculating mind. Even in that age of child marriages, there was an understanding. Consummation waited until 14. It was not kindness but survival. The risk of childbirth was too great. But Edmund did not wait. To him, Margaret was not a child. She was a womb wrapped in gold. A vessel for wealth. And so, what should have been playtime became pregnancy. What should have been safety became assault. And the path to Pembroke Castle was set in motion. By April of 1456, Margaret was with child. 12 years old? Imagine it. A child herself, carrying a child. Morning sickness that must have terrified her, as her body shifted in ways she could not comprehend. She had no voice in this. No choice. Only the demands of a husband who saw her as the key to wealth. And then, As if fate wished to twist the knife further, Edmund Tudor was captured in the chaos of civil war. By November, he was dead. Margaret, 13, was left a widow. Alone, frightened, and 7 months pregnant. On January 28, 1457, in Pembroke Castle, labor began. Margaret's body was too small. Her hips had not grown wide enough. Her bones were still forming. The pain was beyond measure. Hour after hour, her young body strained, tore, nearly broke. The midwives exchanged looks of fear. They had delivered countless children, but this was no woman. This was a girl whose body was betraying her. The birth dragged on, long, dangerous, each breath a gamble between life and death. And somehow, by miracle or by cruelty of fate, she survived. Barely, the child survived as well. A baby boy. They named him Henry. The boy who would one day be Henry VII, founder of the Tudor dynasty. John Fisher, Margaret's priest and later her friend, called it a miracle. A miracle that such a small, fragile girl had managed to give birth at all. But miracles leave scars. Margaret's body was shattered. She would never bear another child. And though history would celebrate the birth of Henry, it began with the breaking of a child's body. Margaret Beaufort grew into power. She became a patron of education, a founder of colleges, a guiding hand behind the throne. She signed her letters, Margaret R., as if she were a queen in her own right. But she never forgot. When her granddaughter faced a child marriage, she pleaded with her son, Henry VII. She begged that the girl be spared, that the man would wait, that her health not be endangered. Margaret's voice trembled with the echoes of her own youth. She knew what waiting meant. She knew what not waiting cost. And yet, history repeated itself. Because power is relentless. Power feeds on innocence. Every time you see a Tudor rose, remember what watered it. It bloomed in the blood and tears of a 13-year-old girl. Every time you hear of Henry VIII or Elizabeth I, remember that their dynasty was born in agony. Margaret Beaufort survived. She thrived. But she was never whole again. She was 12 years old. And that alone should have been enough to save her. Tonight, as you drift into sleep, remember her not as a title, not as a dynasty, but as a child who endured what should never be endured. Let her story remind us of the cost of power, the cruelty of ambition, and the strength of survival. Sleep now. And good night.